Hi, and welcome to Ruby's Ask Me Anything office hours. I'm your host today, Dan Merrick, Director of Plant Based Culinary. During this platform, we open up our instructors to get questions from our students. You can ask any questions you have that are culinary related. In the platform for Ruby, you just need to enter your question into the top right hand side, right next to where you're watching this video. Add your question, hit the add button. It'll go to our moderator, Patrick. And as long as it meets our criteria, it will be forwarded to my queue to be able to answer the questions. You can also watch these on YouTube if you want to go back, or we record them on our platform so you can watch them on the platform anytime you'd like. So I'm going to jump right into our questions today. Our first question is from Robert K. And Robert asks, with with Ruby's professional cooking course, I made and tried the plant-based pho soup for the first time. Incredible soup, but about 25 to 30 ingredients for stock, and soup was a lot. So yes, pho is definitely a complex soup, and the reason it has so many different ingredients in that is because that's kind of what makes it so complex. Different seasonings like star anise and cinnamon that are not commonly used in soups are really a shining example on that one. Adding different acids like the sweetness of an orange, but a little bit of a bitterness of the lemon adds a different kind of complexity to those dishes as well. Now, when you're making a vegetable stock, basically, you kind of start out with a lot of different ingredients to be able to get that dynamic stock at the same time. So, could you use less ingredients? Absolutely. Would it taste as big as the one that you made from Ruby? Maybe not. But that being said, there's a huge variety of different pho recipes out there. And I definitely encourage you to just do a simple Google search to be able to find some other versions of a vegan pho because there are lots of them. The majority of the ingredients, I would say, are typically placed on the top of them that need a little bit more accoutrement to it. But everything else, as far as the number of ingredients, are most likely going to be found in the stock itself, which really adds to be able to make that a very complex dish. So, yeah, you absolutely can narrow down your list of ingredients, probably down to 10 or 12 in ingredients. But just be aware that some of the ingredients, that you might take out of there might add a dynamic flavor profile that might be missing if you do take that out. So that's probably the best thing to start you off with there, Robert. All right, our next question is from Rose. What is the best way to learn different cultures' techniques of cooking? So, Rose, this is something that I've worked kind of a lifetime on doing myself. And I know a lot of our instructors and chefs at Ruby have too. And I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind right away is to travel to where those different cultures are. And if you have the opportunity to do that, try to take some cooking classes from some local people in wherever you're going to. So if you're looking in those local cultures, and you're going to some place like, I don't know, we'll just say Italy, right? Different places in Italy have different kinds of cuisines in it. So if you go to Rome, you might have something versus if you're going more northern Italy as well too. So taking a cooking class in that specific region to be able to find out exactly the cooking techniques that they use is definitely the best way to be able to learn some of those different cultural techniques. Now, beyond that, if you can't do the travel, which not everybody can, you can also look more locally as well too. So there are a lot of places that are little hotbeds of different communities, where the cultural cuisine is really spotlighted through the food that's there. You can look for local cooking classes to be able to spotlight some of those cuisines, but you can also look for different restaurants and ask the owners if they might be able to, do a class or getting a job in the restaurant on a temporary basis to be able to really learn the tips and practices that they're doing in those restaurants too. So the first tip would definitely be to travel to be able to see that cuisine in action, to be able to see what kind of techniques they do. Taking a class from a local in one of those regions or somebody who's come from one of those local regions that's closer to you to be able to do a course as well. So not a full course, but just a class, like an afternoon kind of a thing. And usually you can fit in a lot of different techniques into just one class. So those would probably be my first recommendations. Now, again, if you can't do those, going to your local library, picking up cookbooks from different regions is always a wonderful way to be able to learn as well. I have a huge library of different cookbooks from all over the world and all kinds of different techniques, including cuisine. Like I don't eat meat and haven't done it for 28 years, but I have a lot of books, cookbooks that have techniques on, different meat techniques as well too. I will utilize what they're doing in that and transform it into a plant-based dish as well. So going to your local library, getting as many cookbooks as you can to be able to kind of get some inspiration from those, to be able to look up some techniques that are used in those different cuisines is wonderful as well. You can also find a lot of different videos, documentaries, as far as, PBS shows are a wonderful way to look. There are different things like different shows like Patty's Mexican Table, a wonderful one to be able to show really a bigger view of some of the things that go on in Mexican cuisine because Mexico is such a huge country and has a lot of different cuisines and styles across the entire country. Where if you're on the east side of the country versus the west side of the country, you're going to get a very kind of a different, style of doing certain dishes. So, using the free resources at your fingertips might always help with that as well too. So I hope that helps out a little bit, Rose. Larry, good morning, chef. The last time I steamed fresh green string beans from a local farmer's market, I ended up with a copper red colored water in the steamer. What causes this and is it a concern? Thank you in advance. Larry, this is actually something that's pretty common with steaming string beans. There are a couple things that it could actually come from. One is the bean itself. Sometimes there's a chemical reaction that happens in the bean when the interior bean actually gets to a certain size that when it's steamed, it'll release off, this water droplets, basically kind of coloring the water in the bottom, and it'll come out as kind of a red or copper. I wouldn't say like dark red, but kind of reddish or copper. Now, there are other things that could be happening in chemical reactions too, like using iodized salt in a pan, and depending on the type of pan, could actually make it turn the color as well too. But more likely than not, it's actually just the natural chemical that's coming out of the bean itself, which is a very common thing, and you don't have to worry about that at all. Um, Sometimes it might be the water you're actually using too. So make sure that the water that's in the pan isn't actually changed color, right? So it's actually make sure your water is not copper or red when you're starting out. If it is, that's probably a really high iron content in your water, and you might want to consider doing a filtration system or something on your water to be able to kind of get some of the iron out. But more likely than not, it's going to be just the chemical reaction coming from the bean itself, and there's no concern at all. Here's one from Eugene. Hello, Chef Dan. I enjoyed the first 9 units of Ruby Ultimate Cooking course. What would be the next Ruby plant-based course you would recommend? So the Ultimate Cooking course, I would probably go for the Plant-Based Pro course, to tell you the truth. That is a very extensive. Oh, I see your next question here actually mentions Plant-Based Pro. So let me get to this question too. In my cooking classes and presentations, I mentioned that most of my plant-based cooking comes from Ruby's plant-based online course. So I think you're talking about the plant-based pro, but I'm not 100% sure. We have a number of different plant-based courses. We used to do the forks over knives one. We also have a plants protocol course, which is cooking for health. And we have a vegan essential desserts course, which is fantastic, taught by Fran. And then we also have the pro plant class, which is kind of a higher elevation. And I think that's probably the one that you're looking to do next after these. If not, it might be essential vegan desserts in those. So those are probably the best examples that I would say to be able to go into. But let me finish the second part of your question here. Am I allowed to use any of the handouts from my courses for my students? Um, so you are to a point, you basically, it is proprietary information. So it's our intellectual property through Ruby. So if it's something like, just a simple handout and it says Ruby on it, that's totally fine because you're giving Ruby credit for it. So just make sure to give Ruby the credit on any of the things that you might be handing out on it. And that I'm trying to think of what kind of handouts you might find. We have a couple PDFs that are in the sidebars. There might be recipes or something like that. Um, but yeah, just remember to give credit where it's due. And it sounds like you're probably doing okay with that, especially if you're mentioning to people right away that you're giving Ruby that credit too. Mary, other than prep speed, are there other considerations on soaking cashews in hot water or cold water, even boiling them for 15 minutes to soften? I've come across it in all three ways and wondered, yeah, so that's really just for speed reasons, So a lot of times, like I used to work at a raw restaurant where it was all raw foods. So that would be another consideration to actually not cook above a certain temperature. We would never go above 120 degrees or 140. It's been a while. So we would soak our cashews overnight to be able to get them nice and pliable so they would basically squish between your fingers. But if you're not doing a raw dish, you can also just cook them in hot water. In fact, I usually just boil them, not just soak them in hot water, but I'll boil them just for 15 minutes to be able to make that happen and become very pliable. And then you soak them in a cold water to cool them down. Then you can blend them up to be able to make a creme, like a crema or cream out of them. But really, the biggest thing between just soaking them in cold water versus putting them in hot water is timing. It's how quick it happens. If you don't have 8 hours to soak them, you can always just boil them instead, unless you're looking to do a raw dish. Hope that helps, Mary. Oh, here's another one from Mary. Mary, some recipes may say a medium onion, about a half a cup. What would be the rule of thumb measurement wise for a small onion and also a large onion? So, a half a cup actually seems a little small to me for a medium onion. I would typically say about a half a cup for a small, and a medium cup being about a cup, and maybe a large being a cup and a half. Um, you know, that's probably my, interpretation of that. That's probably a little more that I'd go on each one of those, but those would be the measurements I would go off of. It's a half a cup for a small, 1 cup for, just a regular onion, and about a cup and a half for a larger onion. Now, of course, onions can get smaller and larger than those proportions, but that's typically on base if you're writing a recipe, about the proportions that you would look at. Tammy, are you familiar with making sourdough bread? If so, what is a recommendation for a gluten-free bread? Yeah, myself, like many others, have gone through a sourdough phase, especially during the COVID era. And the best advice I can give you is take really good care of your starter. They do make sourdough starters that are gluten free. You can definitely find them. You can order them online as well, but the hardest part is keeping it fed and keeping it alive. In fact, my kids want a dog really bad, and I told them that they have to start feeding a sourdough starter in order to be able to get prepped to be able to start feeding the dog at the same time. So um, that is probably one of the biggest tasks of doing sourdoughs is keeping your starter fed and healthy, and then being able to utilize that to your needs for making sourdough. I found that, when I was feeding my sourdough and making it off, like you'd have to make it a lot. So we'd have a lot of sourdough bread. It was a lot of times that I'd be able to give it away too. Now, I don't have an exact recipe for gluten-free sourdough. You definitely have to seek elsewhere besides myself on that. Shar Nolan might be a really good person to talk to, who also hosts these Ask Me Anything events, and she's a great gluten-free baker at the same time too. So I would definitely refer you to Shar on that question. And we have another question here from Robert. Plant-based foods seem to be a continuously rising trend. What is your one go-to plant-based signature dish that could win over anyone to join that trend? That's a tough one because everybody has different tastes. And I will usually cater to the person that I'm feeding to be able to win them over. And what I typically do is try to make them not even realize that it's a plant-based dish when they're eating it. So I might ask them, like, what are the foods that you don't like before they come over for a dinner, or what are some of your favorite foods? I always ask what they don't like, so I'm not serving them something if they have an aversion to onion or something like that, or they don't like cinnamon or something like that. I'll make sure not to use those ingredients in the dish. Or like cilantro is a big one, right? Some people, cilantro just tastes like soap to them, right? So it would be something that I would avoid completely. Um, but if you're asking them what they don't like, ask them at the same time what some of the foods they do like. And if they mention, well, I usually like, we'll eat a steak, or I'll have a hamburger, or I'll do, something that's kind of meat centric, kind of think of what you can do on the plant based version of something like that. Or otherwise, just go something with just something that's just like that, is a crowd pleaser, like doing I don't know if you've taken any of our plant-based courses, but doing maybe the chickpea and um, like it's the chickpea crab cake, which is a really good one. I want to say it's bamboo shoot that's with it, but I'm not sure. It's not. It's hearts of palm. It's hearts of palm and chickpea. I developed that a while ago for the plant-based pro course. That one's a very popular one because it's served on just like a bed of arugula with a little garlic aioli on top that you can make into a tartar sauce. So it's a very familiar kind of flavor profile. If they're like a big steak eater, you could do a big lion's mane mushroom and, press it down to be able to make it like a steak that's actually nice and sliceable. Um, pasta dishes are always a popular one where people, it's very to be able to work. But as far as signature dishes, it really kind of depends on who you're serving at the moment. And I like to switch that up a little bit to be able to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of their flavor profiles, but also my own families when I'm serving. Working at different ingredients to be able to make those kind of regular ingredients in my kids' flavor profiles is always great. But when you have a guest coming over that typically does eat meat, kind of catering to their flavor profile is definitely the best way to go. So by the time they're done eating, they don't even realize that there wasn't any meat in the dish. So I don't have a single answer for you, just more of a wide encompassing one. I hope that helps a little bit. And that brings us to the end. Really quick one today, about 20 minutes. So thank you for joining us for the Ask Me Anything office hours. Um, Happy eating.